Good evening. Faced with more budget cuts in the coming financial year, hospitals in the south are predicting further job losses. Stringent cuts imposed in November have already forced the Otago area Healthboard to cut its budget by 3.5%. It also has to fine $3 million for staff pay increases and absorb the pending GST increase. But as Kathy Graham reports, that's nothing on what they'll be expected to do in the coming financial year.
The pressure went on in November when the hospital introduced stringent cuts. Nurses who left were not replaced. That resulted in about 30 fewer nurses on the wards in Dunedin Public. They're coping while patient numbers overall have continued to rise, but it has been at a cost.
It has been affecting the patient care and the fact that the staff don't have the time to spend with patients like they used to, and we're getting back to more task nursing, just doing tasks, which is away from the holistic approach and the primary healthcare approach that the hospital boards are meant to be pursuing.
But Board Chairman Michael Cooper says the current cuts of $2.6 million are nothing on what they're expecting to have to make in the next financial year. If the prediction of cuts of between 6 and 10% prove correct, the board could have to save something like $15 million. That could mean as many as 200 to 300 jobs. The only way Dunedin hospitals could cope would be to change the way things are done.
Health is measured, in my mind, by the years of life and by the quality of that life. And we have to make every dollar we spend count with that objective in mind. And it is my judgment that the least painful way of proceeding is to get the number of bed days in hospital down. Whether it's reducing the number of days for a given procedure, whether it's cutting out weekends, which we can't afford because of the penal rates and so on, or whether it's day surgery, which I repeat, in some instances, people actually prefer day surgery. They actually prefer to come in, have the procedure and go home. The important thing is that there's adequate support for them when they get home.
Professor Cooper admits that will put more pressure on the community. It'll also mean big changes in the hospital. Wards like these may well have to operate 5-day weeks, with patients admitted, treated and discharged between Monday and Friday.
I believe it's a case of choosing between, in some cases, fairly unpleasant alternatives. And I believe less time in hospital is to be preferred to no time. But we are dealing here with very, very massive cuts. I mean, the prediction is 6 to 10%. Now, we are talking millions. And I would be the last to pretend that that's going to be easy or pleasant. But we have to cut. We have to cut in a way which maintains and protects as much of our services as possible. The alternative is to accumulate large debt and to get ourselves into the kind of syndrome and situation which certain boards to the north have. And I am not in that business. This board cannot afford to carry forward large debts because there is nothing down the track which tells me that things are going to get better.
Otago is gradually managing to make the cuts, as this graph shows, and the board's confident it'll come in on target. But Michael Cooper also wants to make sure the public knows what's being forced on the board.
I believe that we are caught in a system in which the taxpayer is not willing to pay in tax for the services they demand as patients, or at least that's the political perception, whatever the truth.
The Southland Area Board's already been forced to take action. It's releasing a report next month exploring a major reorganisation of Southland's health system to accommodate the anticipated cuts. For the moment, though, the Southland Board's living within its budget and actually plans to reopen a ward closed after last year's funding cuts.
A central Otago farmer has had to take to the road with 2,000 sheep. A court order has forced him to shift the sheep off his family's former property, and now he can't find anywhere else to graze them. John McDermott reports.
The long acre or the side of the road has always been the cheapest grazing around. And that's what Middlemarch farmer Peter McAtammany's had to turn to. It's either that or kill these 2,000 ewes. That's if he can find space at already crowded freezing works. A week ago, this flock was part of a mob of 5,000. They were on land the subject of a complex court case involving an Australian buyer. The case is being contested, but in the meantime, the stock have had to go. Grazing's been found for half of them, but for the rest, it could be a long winter, both for the sheep and the shepherds.
We've advertised right right from Tiana right through all the papers. We've had very little response, but, you know, hopefully some will turn up.
At the heart of the issue is the sudden surge of interest in fine wool sheep, and central Otago offers some of the cheapest merino country in the world, hence the Australian interest. As these ewes now graze the roadside, the new owners' merino rams eye them across the fence. But there aren't many mates in store for this lot. For the meantime, their fate's simply to wander.
A group of New Zealand children with life-threatening illnesses are just back from a 4-day holiday in Brisbane. The trip was organised with the help of Air New Zealand employees through their Koru care group and included 11 Otago and Southlanders aged from 7 to 13. As Sally Pears reports, they've been looking forward to the trip for so long, they had a good idea of what was in store.
SeaWorld and Dreamworld.
I just want to see everything. I want to make sure I can do everything.
Shops. SeaWorld and Dreamworld.
The trip started with a mixture of anticipation and some apprehension. But there wasn't time to worry before it was goodbye, on the plane and off. The minute the children, nurses and escorts arrived in Australia, it was off to surfers' paradise to have some well-deserved fun. The children saw sights we don't see in New Zealand every day. They watched the dolphins doing more than just swimming at SeaWorld, and met some pirates with an above-average talent for skiing. Roller coasters of all shapes and sizes were given a try-out, and if you think wheelchairs could be a restriction, think again. But all too soon it was over and home. But the children arrived back in Dunedin this morning with souvenirs, newfound friends and memories.
We went to Dreamworld.
Did you go on the rides and everything?
I went on the roller coaster.
It was all good.
We went on a roller coaster and we went to SeaWorld and Dreamworld.
Was it fun?
Yep.
And it wasn't just the kids who'd had fun. Police officer and escort Ray Wright said there was no stopping the kids.
I spoke to their parents and said, you know, they're going to be spoilt rotten. If they want hamburgers for breakfast, dinner and tea, they're going to have it. Little did we know that that's what everybody was buying them over there. I think they ate about 6 hamburgers a day and about 4 gallons of Coke. You know, there was no homesickness. They just had a great time. You know, they got no nerve, no fear whatsoever.
I just want to see everything. I want to make sure I can do everything as much as I can.
Oh, great kids. And that's the programme for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night. Good night.